little buckets are to preserve it.
Yeah.
And you can sit on this bench and that rounded thing like a bathtub doesn't hurt you. And they would process the flax in these tubs.
So are you excavating at all, or are you just going in there after they excavate?
After mostly, but I excavate too.
Oh, you excavate too?
When you talk processing the flax, what do you mean?
Well, flax is a flowering plant with a long stem. It grows here too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you know that red licorice?
Mm-hmm.
And you can take it and pull it apart.
Yeah. It's,
Well, that's what they want to do. They wet it so they can pull it apart, and then they take those little long strands and they weave it in the cloth.
oh,
They're doing excavating. He's showing excavating stuff if you want to see it. I'm not kidding you.
This is from the Bible.
This is the Bible thing. Come on, sit down.
Okay, this is the part that I wanted to show you before we start the regular lecture.
Okay, sure.
This is the top of Hippos. And these are the churches that we found. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 churches.
Now,
These
what's
are
the
all
distance
first.
between them? What's,
Oh, I would say like walking from here across the street.
okay, all right, I'm just curious, all right.
And this is the main road, the Decimus Maximus here, which you can see in this picture. That's the main road.
All right,
And they have side roads that go to the churches. And so we've excavated about 3 of them. And there's the crew going. This is the basilica. You see the whole site was destroyed by an earthquake in 678. You see all that falling down there?
okay.
So did you do any excavating here at all, or?
I've been working here for 10 years.
Oh my word. So the summers, you go or?
Summers and winters.
Oh, okay, so you do like teach in the fall?
Yeah, I took a sabbatical there too,
Oh,
a year. Okay, so we're going down. This is drawings of one of the churches. Now the churches, this is kind of interesting for you guys. The churches had 2 rooms. One on the left side, all the way close to the altar, which was the presbyter, where the ministers would sit. And they would study scripture, prepare a lesson. The other on the right-hand side, halfway up the aisle, was the diaconicum, which was where the deacons were, and they took care of the sick people.
wow.
And so these were all plastered rooms, and so I took plaster, and I was able to find. This shows you. This is called the rood. It separates, the apse from the regular part. You can see the crosses in here. This is all marble. That's the entrance going. There's some of the mosaics that they have with Greek inscriptions.
So were they etched, or were they,
They're actually mosaics.
oh, wow.
They were put together. This is just my summer work. So anyway, we went in there, we took samples. This is actually where I got sick. I got Malta fever there because the backfill dirt had spores in it.
Oh, wow.
This is actually in the summer of 2017. There you can see where we took, these are the beds that they laid on.
Mm-hmm.
And this little room, this little niche right here is a medicine cabinet where we took samples. And these are the medicines we found.
What kind of spores? What kind of spores?
The spores that got me sick? It's a spore that causes Malta fever. You can look it up on the internet. Our doctors know more about it than I do. But maybe so. Now we found when we were doing the medicine cabinet, we found lots of herbs in the diaconicans because they had to cure people with herbs. And then in the floor we found concentrations of just 1 or 2 different plants. And these plants were indigenous plants. They were plants that they locally gathered, and what they would do is gather them and hang them from the roof beams, and the pollen would go down and make like a stain on the floor.
Wow.
So we could tell which were the plants that they were using for medicines that were from there and which ones they were importing.
So what kind of plants would they use for medicine?
These.
Saffron,
Saffron, mandrake, redhorn poppy, cyclamen, belladonna, henbane, white hellebores, the opium poppy, hemlock, you remember Socrates, henna, and ferns. And they were used for all these different things. Stomach compress, sleep inducer, anesthesia. If you give a little bit, you fall asleep. Give a little bit more and you don't feel pain. Wound poultice, sore eye poultice, antibacterial wound. Actually, cyclamen is used in surgery today.
Right.
Sleep inducer anesthesia, belladonna. That's used for cataract operations today. Henbane, suppository for ear and anal infections. White hellebores, purge for food poisoning. Popium, opium is sleep inducer, anesthesia. Hemlock, sedative, sleep inducer, and then if you take too much, like Socrates, you poison.
Then you don't wake up.
You're overdose. henna, circulatory stimulant. So all of these taken together of these types of herbs we found point to a pattern of wounds. So this city was being attacked. It had walls. It was being attacked. And so they had to treat the wounded soldiers.
What was the last one there?
Fern,
Fern.
it's a
Fern,
fern,
okay.
anti-inflammatory.
Now wormwood, what
Wormwood is artemisia.
is what?
Artemisia,
Artemisia.
like tea.
Okay. And if that was for stomach what?
Oh, where's wormwood? Stomach compress.
Okay.
Like if you have a wound in your stomach.
Yeah.
And this shows you that diaconecan rooms of the late Roman churches are earthly hospitals. And people tended to the people. And it gives the name hospium, hospices. Okay, so then we did the other diaconecan. I will go through that. This is another church. And this one had the bed covered with plaster. So you can see it like people would sit up like in a hospital bed.
Mhm.
And you can see that, so we took samples of that.
So it had an incline on
Yeah.
it? Wow.
Oh,
Just like a real hot. Now this is what we did this
Poor
summer.
striker.
This is the forum. And
Funny.
so we did, you can see this is the Roman forum with the pillars and stuff. And here we did 4 units. This one we went down and we found like Chalcolithic, pre-Bronze Age.
Uh-huh.
Here we found this drain, and this is a project my students are doing right now at the university. We wanted to find out, was it a sewer drain or was it a water?
aqueduct.
Yeah, so we're doing that work right now.
What did you find?
He's
It
going
looked
through
like
what
it
he
was
did
used
this
for water,
summer. He
gathered
hasn't
water.
started
off
the
the
Jerusalem yet.
This is a side street that they're doing. You can see the stones
I
at the
think
side
Al's trying to
street.
get him to start, but he's.
They're using the metal detector to find coins. This is the burnt church. Now this is in the internet. It's in the headlines. The burnt church was this 3rd church that we've excavated. Finally, we got part of it done. It has really good mosaics, but they're all grayed over from being burnt. That's why we call it the burnt
Wow,
church.
sure.
And here you see one of my students, Austin, and they're pulling the dirt back off the floor. And so we're just uncovering it. Here you can see these are peacocks. Here's an inscription. Here's another inscription in Greek. Now, what's interesting that they found in the mosaics is they found this right here in the upper corner here. This right here is a basket, if you can believe that, while looking at the mosaic, with loaves of bread.
Mhm.
And they also found fishes,
Wow.
lots of fishes. So the fishes and the loaves story, remember?
Yeah.
Now, at Topka, on the Galilee side, they have a mosaic right there with the baskets and fishes, referring to the multiplication of the loaves, right? And the feeding of the 5,000. And of course, feeding of the 7,000 on the Greek side. So they commemorated that too, and this is the first church we found that showed that.
Wow.
So it's that they were aware of that. Okay, so here we are, the last day. We've excavated as much as we can. That's me in the middle, wiping down the mosaics with water so they'll look nice and clear. And then we have a drone with a camera, and it goes straight up in the air. And then we took this picture.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
And there you can see this is a newly excavated church. Not all the soil has been excavated away yet. And here you see a door. This goes to the presbyter, but it's not been excavated. This is what it was like before we excavated. It was all covered with dirt.
Wow.
And here's another door on this side that goes to the diaconecon, but that's not been excavated
So
either.
how tall is that? Is that like 6 feet, 8 feet
Yeah,
deep?
it was 6 feet covered.
Now, when you go to a site, you use like some kind of like infrared imagery, or what do you do to say, like, I look at a site, say we got this here, and we're gonna beam down. How do you?
Well, they do a probe.
Okay.
Sometimes they use ground penetrating radar, but they usually do a probe. So we did a probe on this like back in 2009. We didn't get around to excavating until 2019, 10 years later.
Wow.
There's so many different things going on there. Now, this is the site that I just showed you up at the very top here. But on the hill side, and you can see the work area there was a natural amphitheater and an outdoor theater of 25,000 people with it. And so we're beginning to excavate that. And these are some of my students from the university saying, this is Austin. You notice what he's carrying in his hand, a big round ball made of stone? That's a ballista stone. And they had this thing called the ballista, And it was like a crossbow, and you put a great big rock in there like a cannonball and shoot it at the ramparts. So this was from the attackers of the city. And then they had another one called the Scorpion, where they would put an actual spear in there and shoot it at people on the wall. So this shows that it was under fire.
Yeah.
This is Claire, one of my students. This is Jack. This is Adam. He's from Czechoslovakia. He's in charge. This is this summer. And this is another site that was a village nearby, and we were over there. They're just beginning to excavate a synagogue there. Very important for Israel when they find synagogues. Not so important when they find churches. And we were taking some pollen samples there. And this is what we have. Every site has breakfast at 9 o'clock. They take a break at 9 o'clock and have breakfast. You're there at 4 o'clock in the morning. You work till 9. And then you take a break and you work a couple more hours. You go home. Okay, this is Magdala, where Mary Magdalene's from. It's just on the other side of the lake from where we're working. And this is the tower right here. I can get this thing to work.
Now, do you work early because of the heat?
No, it doesn't work on the screen. Yeah, we get up at 3:30. We get on the bus at 4. We're working at 4:30, even before the sun comes up. It's 110 degrees.
Whoa.
100% humidity, 600 meters below sea level. Now this is this thing is
Wow.
It's up there, it's working.
but it doesn't show on the screen
No.
yet.
No.
So this is the synagogue of Magdala. Now this is the main area of excavation. This was found on the edge where they were building a pilgrim hotel. So you can actually stay on this site. You can get a room and stay there. And they're building it over the excavation. And they found this little synagogue, and I mean little, about the size of this room. And the Israeli archaeologist had her son's mikvah, and she brought the whole family, and they had the mikvah in the synagogue, in the first century synagogue. And they said, this thing's small, I can't even get my family in here. And she thought about this, and she said, this is not a regular synagogue, and it's in an industrial area. It's a Jewish Christian synagogue. Because the Jews had to leave and find new places, just like everybody else, when Jerusalem was destroyed. And so she thinks it's actually an early Christian synagogue.
Wow.
And here we are. These are these vats right here. There's 3 of them. We're taking samples there to see what kind of industrial use that it's being done. That's one of my students, Emily. She got a scholarship to go over there, so we're taking samples. You can see the hotel in the background. Okay, so next summer I might be going there again to do some sampling. That'll be our field school for our university next year. We're going back to Magdala. We're switching sites again. Why? Because I did another Phoenician site called Shikmona, and these poles that are at Magdala that I haven't sampled yet. See how close they are? One right next to the other, so you can't even walk between them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that means they weren't used for human, swimming or whatever. They're probably used for an industrial use. And those poles at Magdala, if you compare them to the ones at Shikmona, and there's the Shikmona ones on the coast. Shikmona is right here on the coast, and you can see the Mediterranean. They're right next to each other too. And these I've already sampled, and they were flax poles. And so I'm going to see if those were flax poles. Okay, and then this is what we're going to talk about today. This is Jerusalem. There's the Temple Mount. There's the Step Street. This is the city of David down here, and let me get on to that. This one is shorter than that one, believe it or not, so we can still get it done. Okay, so we're going to, now, you're talking about that church being, nobody ever lived there after that church was destroyed, and the church was 6 feet underground. Jerusalem, from the time of the King David's city of Jerusalem, is outside the city walls. If you go to Jerusalem, you see the city walls, you're seeing the Ottoman Empire's walls built on top of the Crusader walls, and they have nothing to do with Jesus. Jesus visited the Temple Mount, which is the Wailing Wall, but other than that, the city that he was in, the city of David and the Essene Quarter and all the areas he visited are outside the current city wall, 3 stories down. There's an Arab village on top.
Oh, wow.
And there were many different people who lived there throughout the years. So it's 3 stories down. And so we're going to talk. So this is going to be so to work there, we have to go with flashlights underground. And I'll show you some of those.
What do you encounter? I mean, I know this may be off track, but snakes, spiders, what? I mean,
You run into that.
okay.
Black scorpions.
So you
Like
really,
scorpions.
Teresa would like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're aware of it. I'm sure you take precautions.
I remember working at Bethsaida with a group of students, and we just were picking into the side of the dirt, and we uncovered a scorpion nest. It's like 1,000 scorpions, all going in different directions. When we just jumped up out of there, it was like 5 feet down. We just jumped 5 feet in the air and got out of there real quick. And we were in there with shorts and sandals.
Oh,
Sure.
smokes.
I'm glad you can still jump.
A scorpion might make you do that, though. Yeah.
So to place us in time, you've got the Stone Age, then you got the Copper Age, then you have the Iron Age, and then you have the empires, which is like the Babylonian, the Persian, the Greek, the Roman, Byzantine, Islamic Crusader, all the way up to modern times. Now we're going to talk about 2 periods. We're going to talk about the time of King David, which is the beginning of the Iron Age, and then we're going to talk about the time of Jesus, which is the Roman Age. Okay, before anybody lived there, geologists have studied this site because, by the way, I don't know if I pointed that out. You see this map here? This is a medieval map, and right there is Jerusalem, the center of the world. That's Asia, Africa, and Europe. All the maps thought of Jerusalem as being the center of the universe.
Wow.
Never heard of that.
That's an ancient map. I just want to show you. This is what it looked like. There's the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which is in the Bible, but it's the Kidron Valley and the Hinnom Valley. And then you have Mount Zion on one side, and then you have Mount Moriah, and there's a spur that comes out with another Vitterion Valley here. And what happens is you got 2 little rivers cutting the side of the mountain and making a spur that's got cliffs on 3 sides. And so you only have to have a really strong wall on the one side, and that side's next to a mountain. And so that's where the early Jebusite city was that King David took over. Perfect place, because you realize they didn't have mortar in the time of the King David, the Jebusites. So what they did is they would cut into the side of that cliff, and then they would lay the stones in there and build them up as high as they could, and the ramparts would actually be on dirt level up here. And so they actually just leaned the wall into the stones, and they have 2 walls there. One is without mortar, one's with mortar. David later on put in more walls to make more room for his people, and those are mortar walls. So we can tell the difference between them. Okay, this is what it looked like. So you have here, there's the top of Mount Moriah where Abraham went to sacrifice Isaac. And then you have what's called there's like a little groove right here that's called, what is it called? It's like the dung or whatever, where they would throw trash and stuff like that. And then up here, then the palaces are at the top, and here you see that one big wall coming across, and there's the walls that are leaning coming around. And they had a source of water of the Gihon spring, and it would go all the way through the city, supplying people with water, and then come out right there into a little aqueduct that they would use for feeding their animals and things like that. So that's a Jebusite period. Now remember, nothing's up here on the Temple Mount yet.
Okay.
See?
That's a threshing floor up there. The one that David buys later on.
Oh, is that right?
So it's a threshing floor, if you read in Kings. Okay, so the Old Testament story of Abraham, we begin our story in that area of history. He went up to Mount Moriah and was going to sacrifice his son, but just the idea of him doing it, God stopped him. Okay. Oh, I'm going backwards. I'm sorry. Okay, here. Now, Charles Warren went there, and he was the first one to go underground, and this is called Warren's Shaft. And what it was is they thought the Gihon water would come on this little tunnel, and then they would put buckets down, and they would pull the water up in buckets and carry it up through this step thing. And it's still there, actually, this tunnel. But what happens is when you go down this tunnel and you get to this point where that's supposed to be going on, the chips in the wall stop. They're not tunneling anymore. It's a natural tunnel, and they mistook this natural tunnel for the real thing. And here you can see when you go down there, and you're going down that tunnel, and it actually continues down here, and the chip marks stop. But look, there's another tunnel right up here. And actually, in the old time, it went like that, but then this caved in because of erosion. And there you can see into that tunnel there too that we cleared. So the walls of David. Now here's this is actually in the Bible too. When David came there, he wanted to build a bigger palace. And so he built what's called a Milo. And that's this wall right here. So he could build out a terrace to get a bigger platform to build his palace gardens and things. And so that's the Milo right there. And it's still there. We actually excavated and found the Milo. That's a drawing of what the Milo would have looked like. And this is the Milo. And the palace would have been on top of it. And so you can go up these stairs if you go there on pilgrimage and go right underneath this deck. And right underneath there is King David's palace. And here you can see how they incised in the rocks to put pillars up and things like that. And here's the little cisterns that were in the basement. So this is King David's palace right underneath there. And then these are the walls here. You can see the walls coming up. And some of them are lean, and some of them, like the one right down here, it's just leaned in there. And the other ones are straight because they have mortar. And these are like, here you can see the round tower. And here you can see the houses next to the wall. And all of that has been excavated out.
A lot of work, isn't it? I mean, it was.
But you got a lot of volunteer people going and volunteering. Okay, so Solomon's temple. So David purchases the threshing floor. Solomon extends the city up Mount Moriah and builds the first temple. Okay, and more palaces, which is what Ezekiel's talking about in the Bible. He doesn't like the fact that the palaces are right next to the temple. He doesn't like the political and the religion being
separate.
Yeah.
Even back then, right?
Yeah. Wow. There's a close-up of one of the towers. You can see part of it is eroded away. There you can see the straight mortared walls.
So have you ever figured out what they're using for mortar?
Yeah, I actually sample it. It's kind of like lime,
Okay.
which all of Israel was raised up from the seabeds, and so they have lots of quarries that they get lime in of different qualities. If it's really good quality, they make limestone. If it's poor quality, they grind it up and make cement.
Okay.
So it'd be kind of like cement.
Okay.
They would have to burn the lime to make quick lime, right? And then they would use that for.
Yeah. In fact, the Arabs, one of the things on the archaeological sites, the Arabs go to archaeological sites that are open, and they take the limestone stones and the limestone pillars and statues and burn them to make lime. You could burn them back down to the dirt, and then you could mix it with water and then use it for plaster on your walls.
Wow.
So they actually farmed the sites, which is a problem.
Yeah, because it's stripped.
So the first archaeologist who worked there was Charles Warren, and he was from the Royal Engineering College at Sandhurst. He was an engineer in the British Army in the 1800s, around the time of the Civil War. And they needed somebody to go and do an initial survey. So the Israel Exploration Fund funded him to go to Israel. He took two of his sergeants. So this is a captain and two sergeants that you see in the picture here. There's Charles Warren, and there's one of the sergeants there and one there. That's just somebody who's visiting. And what he did is he dug pits and he did soundings, and he then did the whole map. These are geological maps of the actual Mount Moriah, and then where the foundations of the Temple Mount were in the time of King Herod. Wow. And that's what you see right here.
Wow.
It's not perfect.
So that was in the 1800s?
Yeah. And then after he did that, he wanted to do more. And so what he did is he put, let's see if it's in the next slide.
How do they know exactly where to locate if it's all been buried?
Because it's sound. They're
Well,
using
the
sound.
Wailing Wall is there, so you have that to start with.
So you have something to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can follow that wall
Reference
around.
point.
And you can,
Okay.
so then you can kind of, make,
Get a feel of where.
Mhm.
Because they use like seismographic, like beams, the sound waves, so they can know where it's.
well, yeah,
Right,
nowadays,
yeah.
but then they would just core down.
Okay.
Or
So
they,
they had cores all over the place then?
yeah, he would just core down to a hit bedrock, and then he would measure the hole, and then he would add it,
Start-
add as a datum to his map.
So then he start digging.
Which,
Wow.
Now, was Solomon's temple back further towards the Mount Moriah, or?
well, we think it was right around here at the top. You see, this is you see this little square here? This is Herod's first century temple. This is where the Wailing Wall is today. Okay? You see this little square here? This is Solomon's temple.
Okay.
And then there's this mountain top in the middle, and it could be anywhere in that area.
But
If
they
you-
haven't found any like footings or anything from Solomon's temple?
Yes, they
Did
have.
they have?
I have seen them.
Oh.
If you go, it's hard to get in there now, but back in 1980s, I went in there, and you go into the Dome of the Rock, and it's around the dome. The dome is around the rock. And you look at the rock, and you can see, just like I showed you with King David's palace, you can see where they incised into the rock to build their foundations. You see, they always did that. I've been to Iron Age villages, Israeli villages that have been excavated. And they always talk about this, and Jesus talks about it, how you build your house, right? And so if they would dig down till they got to the bedrock, and then they'd incise it and lay their foundations right into the
Well, it's
rock.
like a monolithic core, how you,
Yeah.
so it ties in, so it's not tying into it. You know how we don't.
So you don't see the foundations of the temple. What you see is the imprint. Just like you don't see Jesus, you see the imprint on the Shroud of Turin. It'd be the same thing.
Wow.
You'd see the mark. Okay.
So they're-
All right, so what he did after then is he went right to the southwest corner of the temple. And now you see this tent over here where he's supposedly dwelling. And over here it shows him, and he put this in his book. He's doing his well. And they had these portable walls. And they dig down and they put them in. And then dig down more and put another set in, and reinforcements.
What
and
were
they go
they made out of?
metal.
It was just like our iron,
Yeah, just like you'd see reinforcements in
how
construction here.
we do the iron.
Because these guys were engineers,
Yeah.
And then when he get down there, he get into the water systems and the sewer systems, or he get down into where after the first temple was destroyed, all the rocks fell down, and there were little places where you could dig and go around. And so here you see, for example, but he cheated. Because this is a drawing in the book, but he actually had another tent over here, and this was a fake tunnel, and he actually went right along the southwest corner and traced the Temple Mount down to the bedrock, which is what he wanted to do. And you can see that right here. You see this little plaque? It's to Charles Warren, and it has a ladder going down. And look at now that we've excavated all the way down to the first century. These are the first century steps from Jesus' time. There's the floor, and more steps going up the side. But right here, they're gone.
So,
Because that's where Charles Warren dug through, and he threw them up.
so when they would build another city on top of another one, they would throw rubble in over top.
Right.
Crushed brick.
Crushed brick, and then they would just build right on top of
So-
that.
No backhoes, no dump trucks.
So it didn't compress as hard as like we do now.
No.
Okay.
So
So you
that's
get
why
cracks.
that's why when you dig down, you can still find intact steps
Right.
and all that.
Yeah,
other
it's layer upon layer upon
They
layer.
just filled it in with rocks,
Compacts it,
basically.
how we compact stuff.
Yeah.
So
And that's what we call a tell. For example, a city gets destroyed, but it's still in a nice area. So another city gets built, they just level off the ruins and build another one on top of that. That gets destroyed, they level it off, and so you get layer upon layer upon layer. And here it's 3 stories thick.
Interesting.
So these are pictures from Charles Warren when he went down in there. So this is actually a place where I'm actually working right now. This is a cistern that's on a water drain, and so the rain would fill the cisterns, and then they would go through the drain and go out of the city. And so this is him inside there. He just got access. He came in through the top here, and this is and this is another one over here. You can see there's the top of the cistern, and there's a big rock right here. See this big rock? one of the temple stones that fell when the Romans destroyed it and punctured the street.
Oh,
This is a big, one of the big blocks of the Temple Mount. One of these blocks right here that came from the top.
Oh, smoke.
And when Charles Warren was going down and digging right here, he encountered this piece of stone right here, and he broke it into pieces. And what that was, it was the very top of the Temple Mount, and it was where the horn god, the horn player would go to summon people to worship.
So that top row had the angle so that you could tell that it was, you know.
Yeah, it's got a right angle right here, and it's got a little indent right here where this horn floor can stand, and it has a inscription in Hebrew.
You use the box blocks and how the box block goes like this, and you know when you're done with the thing, so you can lay your tresses on it. Same theory there.
Yeah, see, so that's the horn blower. He's standing right here, so he's standing right here.
so he's blowing a shofar right on the top.
Not a shofar.
No?
No, that comes later.
What type of a horn?
Like a big,
Bugle?
well, not a bugle, like a long extended.
Ram's horn or
No,
No?
like a straight horn, straight and long.
like made out of metal?
Yeah,
Like a metal
Wow.
horn?
and they kind of show it in the picture.
Oh, it's like a trombone.
Yeah, without the slide.
Without the curves.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
And he would have stood right up here.
So he's warning you that somebody could come.
But Charles Warren didn't know what it was because he wasn't an archaeologist, so he just broke it in pieces and threw it to the side. And later, when we came down and excavated all the way down, we found the pieces. And we glued them back together. This one.
And you said there was an inscription on there?
Yeah, you can see it right. The inscription in Hebrew says, let's see if I can read it. No, like, among the classes, to the place of trumpeting to. So it says this is a place where the trumpeter would stand. And it's marked in
People
Hebrew.
to come into the synagogue or?
Well, to come to the temple for worship.
Worship.
Okay.
So which corner?
Southwest.
Southwest corner, okay. Okay.
And
There's
the
a
southwest
reason on that
corner
map,
is
that's
where the building stone that the builders rejected is.
Oh,
We're going to talk about that in a moment.
Okay.
this is getting
Interesting.
even better.
Repeat that, Pat, I missed it.
The southwest corner of the temple, right here, is at the very bottom. When they were building the temple, they got a stone that wasn't the right size, so they threw it away. And then when they got all the stones coming to the first level of the foundation, it wasn't the size of a full stone, and they went back and got that stone, and it fit perfectly. And that's where
wow.
Jesus says the stone that the builders rejected becomes the foundation.
Isn't that cool?
Wow.
And now we've excavated underground, and we're actually to the point of almost uncovering that stone.
So it wasn't just a statement, it was actual.
It was referring to the truth. Okay, there's the horn shaft that we talked about and how he says it was, straight down.
Church of God.
And he believed that Joab, remember Joab was David's general, and he found his way in. That Joab came through here, climbed up this shaft, horn shaft, and then got into the city at night and opened the gates. Remember, if a lame person and a blind person are on the gates, you will not get in here, David. Because he had no siege engines, so there's no way to get in. It was too steep. So they had to sneak in. So they snuck in through the water system. So Charles Warren thought he solved
Cool.
And they did this all without computers too.
that.
Wow.
And that was the theory from 1865 to about 2010. And then my colleague, this is the guy I'm co-publishing with, Ronnie Reich. He went in there, and of course he notices that in Warren Shaft there are no chip marks and chisels, and he realizes this is a karst. And see, you have in limestone karst caves, which is what we call the water table. And so you got water coming down through the limestone, dissolving it, and then making little caves. And so, well, they're caves, but only when it erodes this way do you see that they're caves. But there's little underground pockets of open rock full of water. And so one of those got bigger, and it collapsed the roof of the shaft and connected